Today on Bleacher Report, Howard Beck writes, the only sensible play for the Knicks to make to build for the future is to trade Carmelo Anthony. Interesting article. I know you guys checked this out today. You should as well. It's an interesting premise for the future of this team. Carmelo Anthony can opt out of his contract this coming summer. If not, the Knicks are on the hook for another year, or some team is on the hook for another year beyond that. They're really inflexible in terms of their salary cap, in terms of moves they can make with Melo on this team. They don't have a first-round draft pick this coming summer. They have one in 2015. Tons of money on the books between now and 2015 when Tyson Chandler's contract expires. I guess the fundamental question is, can the Knicks, with Carmelo Anthony, become a contender? He would be 35 at the end of a 5-year contract should they extend it.
The only way, in my opinion, that it can work is can Steve Mills convince Carmelo to take less? Because there's no way you can take up all the salary cap, and now you're leaving Steve Mills handcuffed to go out and find the players that you need around you. Carmelo's best year was in Denver when he had guys like Chauncey Billups around him, making sure he was playing the game the right way, making the extra pass, or saying, no, Carmelo, get away from that three-point line, get in the post, get closer to the basket, and be more effective. If he's willing to take less, I think Steve Mills has a chance to put better players around him. If not, there's no way it's going to work.
There's also, 3D, in my opinion, an inverse effect going on with the New York Knicks and seeing what's happened to them over the past 2 or 3 seasons. Last year, a great year with a lot of veteran guys around Carmelo Anthony. Mike Woodson did a great job. This team really shifted its identity from a three-point shooting team, run and gun, to a little bit slower in the second half of the season. It might have cost them a few games, but obviously very competitive last year. And then this year, all the pressure that's been on this team to try to get back to that same sort of winning ways, they're so far from that. They're so far from being a descript team. They're a nondescript team right now with a lot of guys around Carmelo Anthony as the star. Mm-hmm. And the relief for the Knicks comes not after next year, it's the year after. They're up to $91 million committed next year if all the guys opt in.
Right.
Which they very well could do. Right. And then there's relief later. But the inverse effect, to get back to my long-winded point, is the fact that how many guys are going to be willing to go to New York if Carmelo Anthony were to take less money, like you say, which I don't think will happen, but right. How many guys will want to go to New York City and play with Carmelo Anthony to try to establish something that's going to take 2-3 seasons
right.
to get those things together, to get the chemistry right, to get the playing style together, to learn to play with one another, while what's going on in Miami and Indiana is happening. That's a really tall mountain for a collective group of guys to have to manage and get over. I don't know how many guys are willing to do that. So Howard writing the article today, it's an interesting thought for the New York Knicks to go out and explore, because there are teams that feel like, wow, we've got pieces in place. We've never thought of adding the talents of Carmelo Anthony to our team and the system that we run. Where could we go with him on the roster? And so the idea is for New York to think about their future and where they're going to go without Carmelo Anthony. You know, come February, this is definitely going to be a talking point. We're getting ahead of ourselves now, but it's something that has to be considered for the longevity of your franchise as to when it is that you move. Denver made out, you know, seemingly for at least a season.
Yeah.
They're sort of
they brought back assets.
Right. Yeah. And so that's what New York has to take into consideration at this point.
Well, and there has to be the right buyer as well in that trade scenario, somebody who wants to take on his salary.
And the salary after, right, Matt? I mean, the contract after has to be, like, you got to think.
You have to be committed to that.
We're making this deal because we're going to make the maximum or a close to maximum offer
long term
for the next 5 years to this player to have him be our franchise guy.
Well, and philosophically, you have to also want Carmelo Anthony and his style of play as the centerpiece of your team. There's a school of thought out there that he is a difficult star to play with. Can he be compatible with other star players? And that's a combination you almost always see reaching the NBA Finals, more than one star.
You can do it, and the only idea that comes to mind for me was when Allen Iverson was the guy that took all the shots in Philly. Then Larry Brown went out and got the George Lynches, the
that's my point. Yeah, there wasn't another star.
But that's the only person I can think
of,
that team that made it to the finals, obviously losing to the Lakers, but they said, okay, this guy's going to take 40 shots a night.
Right.
So let's go get rebounders, shot blockers, and defensive guys.
Play good defensive basketball
and lock people down.
He's our offense.
He's our offense, and when he shares, guys got to make shots.
That gets back to my question. Is he compatible with another star player?
I'm going to talk to 3D about what is it. So what's this roster? What's missing that this isn't where Carmelo takes the bulk of the opportunities on the offensive end, where they have a defensive presence in Tyson Chandler?
That's only one guy, though.
So,
but they're not a good defensive team.
That's my point. They're not overall a good defensive team the way that Philadelphia team was with Allen Iverson back in the day. That's totally two different teams defensively. To your point, yes, Carmelo's taking all the shots, AI's taking all the shots.
Okay, do you think that style, the Philadelphia team, the way it was constructed 3D, first of all, Carmelo is not as prolific a scorer as Allen was. He's just simply not. He doesn't do it in the same way.
No,
but I'm going to say
he's the volume.
That style,
he's not, but I think the analogy works.
Right.
I do too. Right. I do. I'm in total agreement with that. But just a different style in which he scored his points. But in the way the game is played today, the way that the three-point shot, the way the game is opened up, can that one score for defenders? You think a team could do that? Could stop another team? Be able to play around one offensive player?
Honestly, looking back, I'm surprised it worked that time.
Exactly. It's all a matter of who those players are and are they going to buy in. And I think that's what Larry Brown was able to do back then. Right. Now it's up to Steve Mills and Mike Woodson to do the same thing. If you're going to keep Carmelo, he needs the ball in his hands. He's going to take, if you got 80 possessions, he might take 45, 50 possessions. He's going to get his shots up. Now, do you put the right players around him to make it work?
And you also create an incredibly small margin for error should that player get injured for any period of time.
Exactly.
I just think it's interesting what type of player that is. You know, trying to find out. If you go through Carmelo Anthony's career and the types of players where he's had success, team success around it, the George Karl years in Denver, surrounded by players like Chauncey Billups, who headed up things against the Denver Nuggets. I remember a playoff series where we were scared to death of Carmelo Anthony inside the post, where we were playing Bruce Bowen on him, but all of our attention was focused on what it was Carmelo was doing in the post. But they had so many other weapons out there that made them a very difficult team to stop in George Karl's system. I just wonder, what type of player is it at this point? And the last point I'll make is the idea about Carmelo Anthony signing a maximum deal under the new CBA, what that does in terms of your flexibility and him aging as a player as well. You're continuing to pay this player as he gets older for that type of production, which might come down. And if he's still trying to play the same way, I just wonder who the connective tissue is for that basketball.